Hi, my name's Nick. I'm an alcoholic. And by God's grace, my sobriety date is March 9th of 2000, and I hope I remain forever grateful for that. Lisa, you could have kept talking up here. You give me a lot of compliments. Thank you for asking me. Unfortunately, your other person didn't show up. And I've also been taught in Alcoholics Anonymous, when you're asked, you show up. So I really am honored by that, to be considered. A lot of you guys have heard my story already, so if you guys fall asleep, I certainly give you an okay for that to happen, just because you've heard it so many times. My job up here, first of all, I want to take a moment to get centered, please. Okay. My job up here is to tell you what we were like, what happened, and what we are like now. And I used to say what I was like, what happened, and then how I am today. And that's not what it says in our literature. So, can you hear me okay? And we're being taped, so I got a live. Is there an audience there too? Okay. All right. So, I have to forewarn you, I'm originally from Chicago. And I've been in Texas a very long time, hightailed it out of Chicago. The law was on my tail again. So I got down in Texas in 1988. So sometimes I say you guys, sometimes I say y'all, and sometimes I use it in the same sentence. So both of those words, so just to give you a little heads up. So my alcoholism started at a very young age. Actually, it was all throughout my household. My parents were... very handsome couple, and my mother was an absolute beautiful woman. My dad was a tradesman, and they were immigrants. And my dad was the youngest out of the boys, and he was the first one with a son, which is a big deal for immigrant families, and first one with a home, and the first one with the, so they were just the envy of all. But they did a lot of entertaining. That was back in the early 60s, late 60s, and early 70s. And so, so much entertaining. I used to think that it was normal, but we used to have a beer truck delivered to our house once a week. And I didn't realize until much later in my life that that's not normal. And they drank alcoholically, let me just say that. And with alcoholism, you start seeing the decline in things, right? Relationships and family, and so there. My dad when he was young, he was just handsome guy. One of those guys that every time he walked into a place, everybody turned around and looked at him, male and female, right? So I had a lot of, even at an early age, it was you got to look good on the outside, don't worry about the inside. Right, and that's what happened in our household, and things started getting violent real quick. And Dad came home from Canton, and Ma was a little mad about that, so she decided to cut him wide open. And that's what she did. On the outside, everybody thought we had it together, but inside, a lot of violence, chaos, and alcoholism. I will tell you, the first time I had a drink was the coffee table was about chest high. And it was after one of the nights of entertaining, and I smelled some of this peppermint stuff and a bunch of empty shot, halfway full or so in shot glasses. And I drank it. And I'm telling you, I can remember it was really hot, but I could also, and as I tell you this story, I remember the feeling. Now, I'm almost certain that I got sick after drinking that, but I do not remember that, right? I remember that first drink, though, and I didn't become a daily drinker then, but I did start out in a habit. I drank my bottle till I was 5 years old, and it really made my dad very angry every time he saw it. He would beat my tail. And so my ma used to have to sneak my bottle. So I was a closet bottle baby. And I will tell you this, that very defiantly, I made sure that everybody knew I was drinking. So once I started drinking and got my drink on. Well, anyways, back to part of the things that happened with me early on. It was all about the appearance. We'd go to church during the time, during the holidays, and we were always supposed to look good, and it was one of those things. And I couldn't wear jeans even to school, because my dad said, you don't do that. You wear dress pants and hard shoes, and all the other kids are wearing tennis shoes and jeans. And so I'm feeling a little awkward, right? And then, and I had something. It's the typical story of the tough dad. I was in kindergarten. There was a kid, Mikey Carlson. I still remember his name. He was a grade older than me, and he chased me home to beat me up. And I saw my dad, and he got rained out that day. And so he's a bricklayer by trade. And so I saw his car in the driveway, and this bigger kid is going to beat me up. And he did exactly the way the story goes. He says, turn around and you face that kid. And I remember feeling so crushed by that. You're supposed to protect me, right? So he made me fight this kid. And this kid, he's a much bigger kid, so he thumped me pretty good. And but my dad said, I'm proud of you because you stood up to him. Now that is such a wrong thing to do these days. Anyways, those days and these days, right? So things progress. My dad hightails it out. We wound up moving from the suburbs into to middle class into very low class. Inner city, public aid. Dad's out of the picture. He's a deadbeat dad. He's not pitching in any cash. So it's me, my two sisters, and my mom. And my mom doesn't have any type of vocational training, uneducated. They only went to, she only went to school to 8th grade. Then they start in Europe. They start the vocational training after that. So, and there was a lot of shock. First day at Chicago Public School, first of all, I've never seen a person of color before going there, and then I'm all of a sudden the minority, right? And then the first day they tell you got to see what your social status is, and you got to fight these two guys. I like, both at once? And they go, no, one at a time. And some of that fear came up from, I remember being extremely afraid, because I still remembered that Mikey Carlson deal, and when he thumped me. So I know at this time I'm 9 years old, just turned 9. Yeah, just turned 9. And so I fight these guys, and I do really well. But I mean, only reason I did well is because I fought completely out of fear, and I went like berserk. And so I thumped both of these guys. And now that was the first lesson that I had in my life, that violence pays. People leave you alone if you're violent and you beat them up. And that went on in my life for a long time, unfortunately. My mother took this job at one of those nice beer joints, the ones that open at 7 a.m. where all the trades guys come in. So she asked me if I would come in and help fill her cooler. And I said, sure. And I come to the realization I could start stealing some cans of beer out of there, and she wouldn't notice. And so I did that, and I want to tell you, from that moment till the day I quit drinking, every opportunity I had to steal it, drink it, however I had to get it, and I had the phenomenon, the craving very early on. I remember when we were kids, we attract like-minded people, and I got a couple little knuckleheads my same age. We're smoking cigarettes, and we're boosting, pop bottles off the porches, and back when you could get money for them, and just being mischievous. But we'd get enough, and then we'd go to the beer store to get a runner. Now there was 3 of us, and when you got a runner, you had to relinquish one of your beers. It was the wino guy, right? It was the drunk that would sleep by the package store so he could panhandle and get more booze. So we'd get our 6-pack. We knew that there was going to be one less. Somebody was getting one less, and I'm telling you right off the bat, I go, all I know is I'm getting 2, and I'm willing to fight for it. right? And then even then, shortly thereafter, just knowing that those two aren't going to be enough. Those two aren't going to be enough. So the moment that I start drinking the first one, we got to go find some more money, however that may be. And that started right away, very early, and got in a lot of trouble. We were unsupervised. My mother's disease got very progressive. That once beautiful woman now is in the throes of alcoholism. And you guys know what that looks like. And we got strangers coming to the house. You know, there's men that are coming to the house, and her drinking is just sloppy. We're not getting food. There's no clothes. You know how it looks, right? So I come to an understanding at a very early age. If I was going to take care of nobody was going to take care of me. Anybody that was supposed to take care of me wasn't going to take care of me or protect me, and that I needed to do it on my own. And there was a few times during my life that people did try to help me, but I wanted nothing to do with them. And you know, I didn't realize till after 14 years sober that had to do with shame. And in any event, so my drinking progressed, trouble. In and out of juvie 3 times, then got incarcerated, county jail, and then did 1 stint. So the progressive nature of the disease, but I didn't really care for that jail and prison stuff. I'm going to tell you that right now. I thought I was a tough guy, but you know, I just turned 18 years. In the state of Illinois, you're tried as an adult at 17. And when they sentenced me and I went to Joliet State Penitentiary, as a 180-pound, you know, blonde hair, skinny little runt guy, and you're walking into a facility. For those of you guys who have been incarcerated, you understand what that looks like. Those are grown men in there, right? Now, something even back then was watching out for me, because even through all that situation, nothing terrible or tragic ever happened. And I'd like to think today that there was a higher power working in my life watching over me then. And I will tell you this, what I did like about that is the simple fact as being an ex-con and be a tough guy, people left you alone. And what I used to think that was, and I still have a problem with it today, it was respect. You know, people respected me. And just because they used to say things like, you got heart, you go into battle no matter what, right? You watch out, you're a stand-up guy, you watch out for your buddies, and you know, don't rat on nobody, right? And you know, I wound up just a lot of, you know, I can tell you through there, thank God for alcohol to be able to survive that. I look at what those animals did, my parents, you know, during those times. I mean, it was crazy. And, you know, thank God my little sister got separated from all that. She wound up, my dad started getting back in our life, and, you know, he's trying to make good. And me, I'm still trying to take care of that alcoholic mother. Now she's homeless, so I got to find her a place, and then I got to take care of her. I got to take care of myself. But the alcohol worked. I will tell you that this is Alcoholics Anonymous, but I do have some drugs in my story. All I can tell you is that I used my drugs very alcoholically. And, you know, that white powder, man, I watched when crack cocaine, when first it was freebase and then crack cocaine hit the scenes. And for those of you guys out there, I just watched. I mean, that was some deviant stuff, man. That was some terrible, terrible stuff. I think it helped a lot of people hit their bottoms quicker. And throughout that period, too, I remember walking into churches. I remember watching people. Sunday mornings, I would watch them. And I tried walking into the churches a couple times, even the one I was confirmed and baptized at. And I just felt like every time I went in there, they were talking at me. and tell me I was a sinner and I wasn't worthy. And that's what I heard. I don't think today that's what they said, but that's what I heard. I come up with some great ideas, drinking and drugging. One of the ideas was now I broke the golden rule. I was dealing drugs, and then I used my own product, and we know what happens with people like me when that happens. And so, but I come up with some really great ideas, and I bought counterfeit money for used to get really good grade for 20 cents on the dollar. And then I bought with the counterfeit money, then I bought drugs and then turned the drugs into hard cash. So if you compute that a little bit, you realize your world starts getting dangerous very quick, right? I'm ripping off drug dealers. And then in the mix of that, we're finding guns places. We're finding them. And so things are getting hot, and and even back then, there was some things happening to my friends that were it was a bad deal. It was stuff you see in the movies, and something intuitively told me there was one particular incident that I was supposed to be at, and something told me in my gut, and I like to think that's a higher power watching out for me back then, not to go there. And then next thing you know, 30 minutes later, I see him on TV, and it's on the news. So even back then, something. So anyways, heat's getting on. Dad wants to get back in my life. By this time, he's in San Antonio, Texas. And I show up to San Antonio with one extra pair of underwear, one extra pair of jeans, and one extra shirt. My head shaved. I'm a mess. And he reaches out, he wants to rekindle, and I swear to you at that moment, I go, okay, I'm going to change my life. I'm not going to do that stuff anymore, that stuff that I was doing. I'm not going to do it. I just need a new break. I need a new beginning. And, man, within 3 days, I'm rummaging through his closet and his jewelry box to get my deal. And so, we wound up getting in a fight, and I'm homeless in San Antonio. Now, I will tell you, I'm one of the cleanest homeless people you ever want to meet, because I'm going to buy shampoo and soap before I get my drugs or alcohol. Because I know to survive, you got to look good, right? So at least halfway good. So you got to be clean. You got to smell decent at least. And I wind up being homeless in San Antonio. And I wind up, I do what we do. I'm a survivor, right? I know what to do. I'm going to go up to the local Clicks Billiard. I'm going to hustle a little pool. I'm going to see a little chickie, wink, see if I can hustle out of a couple bucks. And I forgot my wife's in the audience today. I'm going to find a place to shack up. You know how we do, and then I'm down the road. But I wind up getting a job. Somehow I got a job, and it was a little stop and go. It didn't pay much, but the fringe benefits were phenomenal. All the beer and cigarettes I needed, alcohol. Then from there, alcohol, I stopped the other stuff, completely alcohol. And this is finally a point in my life I go, okay, I can stop that other stuff, but there's no way I can stop the alcohol. That's just part of my makeup. It's part of my culture. It's a part of who I am, and I need that medicine, right? I need some of that relief. And then from there, I get a job in a warehouse. Then from there, I get a job at UPS driver. I mean, God was working. Alcohol allowed me to become everything that I needed to become to survive. And also, those things that I thought would make me happy, right? For me to be okay. And I started getting all those things. My story's kind of bass-backwards because I started getting more and more, went from homelessness to getting more as a result of alcohol. But then now, at this point in my life, my hole starts getting bigger, right? I wind up meeting this woman. It was just kind of a relationship of convenience. Now, I will tell you this. That woman, we were together for 10 years, and she had brought her son when he was a year old, and he's my stepson, Stephen. and we're very involved in his life today. So that was one of the blessings of that relationship. Other than that, it was probably one of the most, it was just toxic, just toxic. I got in the elevator industry, good union job. I'm getting the stuff, I'm getting the house, I'm getting the new cars. I'm involved with organized labor now, but all the time I'm waiting for, I'm involved with COPE, local politics, and I'm just waiting for somebody to find out about me, right? They're going to find out who I was back in Chicago. And it was just carrying on that facade of everything that I thought everybody needed me to be. And that hole's getting bigger, and I'm going to church, and I'm going because the ex-wife, she's a little bit of a holy roller in the beginning, and I'm trying to get something. And every church went in, about 4 or 5 churches, and every church I went in there, they're pointing at me, telling me I ain't worthy. Now I don't think that's what they said, because I've been to church now since I've been sober, and that's not what I hear in those churches anymore. But that's what I heard. And March 8th of 2000, let me just say this. She's gone, finally gone. Surprised that she stayed with me. My drinking's to the point where it's not whether or not I want it, I have to have it. I tried so many times not to drink and stop drinking, and physically I couldn't stop. I just couldn't. It wasn't even a question. I come to the realization or the conclusion that I'm going to die a drunk. And I'm even positioning myself to do that, right? I'm gonna get a little plot of land. I'm gonna have a little camper, and I'm gonna have to die a drunk. That's just, and I'm already calculating like how much am I gonna need based on disability. I'm 34 years old, right? But that's where I'm at now. At this point, there's blood coming out of every area, I'm shaking. I got to take a pull twice through the night. All the things that I said I would never do, I wind up doing, and I become. Right? I'd never miss a day because of drinking. I'd never drink in the morning. I'd never slap my wife while I'm drinking. And all those things that I did, I never hit my son, and that's what I wind up doing, drinking, because that's what I do. Right? I want to defend that drink, and if you get in the way of that drink, I'm done with you, right? And how do I know how to handle those situations? So nothing was going to keep me. March 8th of 2000, I'm absolutely saturated. I'm saturated, and I can't do this anymore. And the best way I heard it described in Alcoholics Anonymous is that you were sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I can relate to that. And I felt as if, though, it was so much work. Was so much work, and I felt as if though if you wrung me out over a bucket, that it would be nothing but nasty, filthy, just yucky water. That's how I felt. And I wound up sticking a gun in my mouth and started pulling the trigger, and that ex-wife of mine with the little spooky sixth sense, she called at that moment. And it wasn't a nice divorce at all. It was a pretty ugly situation, but she called me, and I told her that night I was physically drunk. I heard my wife describe it like this, and this is, I was physically inebriated, but I could feel everything. And I tell her what's going on. Next thing you know, there's 5 San Antonio police officers at the house, and they got their guns drawn. And the sergeant must have been a friend of ours, because what they're supposed to do in the state of Texas is take you to the nut house for 3 days, right? And psychiatric ward for 3 days. And this guy, he rummaged through my wallet. He saw my affiliation with labor and also my insurance, and he says, look, I'm supposed to take you to the state hospital, but they got a treatment center, and you got decent insurance. Would you go there? And I just go, yeah, whatever. And he took me there. Now let me back up. That time I was homeless, after getting in a fight with my dad in San Antonio, one of those places I went to where I figured there was some suckers is this place called AA. And it's called Club 12, and I saw it in there, and I walk into this clubhouse, I pull my shirt, you know how we do, pull the shirt tail out, muss up our head, make us look like poor and pathetic, and I walk in there, and I'm looking for something to eat and some coffee and some cigarettes, and there's an old guy, Bob Jorgensen, he's passed away now, but, and he brings me to a couple meetings, and I'm like, hey, when are you guys going to set me up in like an apartment or something, what are we doing here, right? And takes me out to the Bulverde group. And the Bulverde group, every single meeting is page 62. Wednesday nights, page 62, selfishness and self-centeredness. And I'm trying to do this deal because I'm running a hustle. He told me, he says, I don't know about the rest of all that stuff, but I'll tell you this, if you want to stay sober, we'll do whatever we can to help you stay sober. But the rest of that bullshit, I don't know about all that. And I remember I was pissed. And I was walking out of Club 12, and there was this guy, Cooper. And I was looking at those steps on the wall. And that 5th step, I ain't doing that. That 9th step, how the hell do you get that done? Like, not where I came from. That's not going to happen. So I'm not doing any of that stuff. So on my way out, Cooper gave me my first big book, and this guy, he was a big man. Did you know Cooper, Lisa? Okay. So Cooper, unfortunately, didn't die sober. He died drunk, and he told me about his last using. He was on a 7-day binge, and when he woke up in bad shape, sick, he had a syringe and a little bit of alcohol on the bottom of the vodka bottle. And all he had, no money left. So the only thing he could do to stop being sick is he drew up that vodka and he mainlined it. And I go, I'm not that bad. And I wasn't. I wasn't that bad. Now, what I didn't hear was the hopelessness of his situation, right? Here I am homeless and I'm judging this guy. But that's me as an alcoholic, right? So I go through treatment, and what had happened is that I love H&I, and the reason why H&I is so important is that very next day in treatment center, there was a group that brought a meeting into where I was at, and I go, that's it, Alcoholics Anonymous, that is it. And I'm grateful for, I'm also grateful for, there was 2 psychiatrists on staff, and Dr. Rao, she truly understood our disease. She understood the hopeless case, the hopeless state of mind and body of an alcoholic. And what she told me was, there's nothing I can do for you. Now, if you get homicidal or suicidal, you need to call me. But other than that, the only thing I can tell you is go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's a miracle. Because I don't hear that as often as I think we should. But and she didn't get me on meds. Now, I will tell you through that time, I didn't realize, even with the detox and through the treatment center, you don't really realize how much you need alcohol until you stop completely, right? It's kind of like you don't know how much you need air until you stick a bag over your head, and that's how I felt. And after 15 days, Dr. Rao said, you got IOP because of your job and stuff, but the best thing I would do is go to AA and just hang out there all you can. And that's what I did. I went to Club 12. As soon as I got out of there, I didn't even go to the house. I went straight to AA, and there was a guy, Arthur M., and he was sitting by the door, and he goes, hello, young man. And he was probably... I don't know. I think he was 15 years sober at the time, and I says, I just got out of treatment, and I don't know how to stay sober. Now, that was the first time in my life I ever admitted that I needed help and then asked for help. And I got into AA. It was a little freaky in here. You guys were a little too nice. You said you weren't religious, but you were still a little religious. You guys held hands and you said the Lord's Prayer and you passed the basket. Looks a little churchy to me. And I'm waiting for you guys to tell me when I'm going to have to give you my bank account information so you guys can start drawing that out, And you guys didn't do any of that. And you guys didn't talk at me. You guys shared your experience, strength, and hope. And I was very fortunate. Club 12 was open from 6 a.m. till I think like midnight every day, and they had a food bar, a concession bar, and you could hang out there all day when you first sobered up. And there were 7 meetings a day, smoking and non-smoking. There was always retired old timers with a lot of sobriety. And they said very wise things. I remember I walked in one time and they're all playing dominoes. We had a couple of dominoes and Garland was sitting there and he goes, "You look guilty." I says, "Garland, I feel guilty." And he goes, "You know why we feel guilty?" I says, "No, Garland, how come we feel guilty?" "Because we're guilty." And I used to think these things were so profound, and that they were all mind readers, And what happened is that I got into Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know we got into service. I didn't know any other way. I didn't have any other options. I remember it was around the club anniversary, and it's time, and it was always a big deal, Club 12 anniversary. And the little old lady who was a non-alcoholic that worked behind the concession bar, her name was Carol, and she'd say, "You need to peel some potatoes and put on this hairnet." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm really not. I'm more of a shot caller, And she's like, "Put the hairnet on, peel potatoes, And that's what I did. And really thank God for that direction, right? Clean the ashtrays, right? Stack the chairs, whatever it was. And then... then all of a sudden I'm bouncing around Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm doing the steps. I'm doing everything that's suggested. Sometimes begrudgingly, but I'm doing them nonetheless. Because I believed that you believed, right? And I had this deal. I remember it was step 2, when I first started reading, thank God for the chapter of We Agnostic. And I loved the way that the literature absolutely unfolded in my life because I was open-minded for the first time in my life. And I'm sitting in the front row, and I'm going through my step 2, and there's an Irishman with a brogue, and he says the F-bomb and God in the same sentence. And I remember standing up immediately and going to the other side of the room because I knew he was going to get struck by lightning. So I stopped him after the meeting, and I kind of like, "Hey, Mick, you can't be saying stuff like that, And he kind of laughs at me and chuckles, and he says, "Sure I can." He says, "Because God knows what's in my heart." And so I asked that man to sit down. Tell me, makes me emotional. Tell me how you got to believe in that higher power. Tell me how that happened in your life. Sorry, I don't know why I became so emotional all of a sudden. In any event, and I did. I created a higher power of my own understanding that loved me. It got my back no matter what. So I'm sober about 8 or 9 months, and man, I see this good-looking tall blonde coming in around, And I asked the old timers in the club. I go, "Who's that?" They go, "That's Lisa H. She's way out of your league." Yeah, just tell that to an alkie, right? So I did the AA courting. You guys know what that looks like. You just show up wherever they are. "How you doing? How you doing?" "Oh, you doing service work too?" So, actually, it was a little more innocent than that. We were very involved in service. Our home group was the Highlands group of Alcoholics Anonymous. It was started in 1953, and we just did a lot of service work. And we got to know each other. And she shared one Sunday morning, and I asked my sponsor permission if I could ask her out, and he was kind of said, "Yeah, sure, good luck, I guess." He knew I was going to be disappointed, or so he thought. So I followed her out to her car to thank her for her morning talk, and then ask her out for dinner, and she said yes. So, and it really was new beginnings. I remember walking in. It was a week. First of all, she did something very strange. I said, ask her out for dinner and this coming Friday. And I said, I'll swing by and pick you up. She says, oh, no, I'll meet you at the restaurant. I don't know you. So, and it was a lot of new things. We were given some instructions. We went to our sponsor, and we were given instructions on what we were supposed to do. And we also had some good examples in our life. People with long-term sobriety that were married a long time, and we didn't know how to do this. How do we know how to have a healthy relationship? So we wind up, I asked her to marry me, and that was a miracle in itself, for the simple fact of, I want to share the story because it's very important. So I go to my sponsor. I said, I want to ask her to marry me. And he goes, okay. I said, so can I let up on my financial amount so I can buy her a ring? Because no dame like her is going to say yes to a mook like me without a big rock, right? And my sponsor said something to me that still rings true. Too often we allow old belief systems that we have keep us from getting the gifts that God has in store for us. All those old belief systems. I also like the story of when they asked Michelangelo about the statue of David. How did you make such a perfect statue of David? He said, I chipped away everything that he wasn't. And I think that's what Alcoholics Anonymous, and this is very early in the beginning with us. Next thing you know, Lisa comes to me and she says, honey, I don't know where this is coming to, but I think let's move up the wedding, and because I want to have a child. Now, she didn't know at that time about the past and the 10 years that with the ex and the drama that's associated with all that. The fertility experts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I wound up going to my sponsor. By now we're married, and I go to my sponsor, and he says, do you want to be a dad? He says, I know you're a dad to Stephen, but do you want to be a father? I guess it's because my birthday month. Sorry, guys. I said, I want to be a dad more than anything in this world. And he says, why don't you write down everything that you believe that's keeping you from being a father? And so I did. I did an inventory of that. Most importantly, that God, I was an animal in the old days. I was described by people as evil. Called me things like psycho, and I was. I was a hurt kid. And I'd never believe that God would bless an animal like me with a child. Thank you. And I read that to my sponsor, and I did a 6 and 7 on it. About 2 weeks later, I come home, and Lisa's ear to ear smiles. And she says, honey, I'm pregnant. And I'd like to tell you at that time my faith was so much. But what I said to her was, is it mine? Sorry, honey, I had to laugh it up a little. Yeah. And then the next thing I said, you're going to get big. Thank God for her love and patience. She also had 10 years at that time, so I think God did that on purpose to make sure he found a very tolerant woman for me. And our daughter was born. There's no mistaking her. For those of you that have seen her, you can definitely tell it was my daughter. I think God does that purposely. At least he did in my life. And just Lisa and I, we did our best to be an example of Alcoholics Anonymous, a walking example. We created a household that we broke the chain of alcoholism and all that drama and violence and just all that chaos. I mean, I'm not saying it was perfect, but I'm going to tell you one thing. It was a hell of a lot better and saner than what we were brought up in, and we got a well-rounded child today, right? And I don't know if she's ever going to need these rooms, but by God, that's one of the reasons why I'm up here this morning. I swore to you this morning, I said I wasn't going to get emotional. So much for that. So now we got new beginnings. You know, once again, our daughter's off at school. Lisa and I spent the entire week last week praying on her knees. She went to Cabo with a couple of her girlfriends, unchaperoned. She did send some videos to Mom, and Mom told her, whatever you do, don't send those to your father. So thank you, honey. Thank you, honey. But no, we got a well-rounded kid, and we're not sure, you know, what the future brings. But I can tell you one thing, that we gave her 110%. We gave her 110%. And I'll tell you something about Alcoholics Anonymous. If you really want a life, and without all that drama and the repeating of let me back up a little bit. Alcoholics Anonymous, the steps therein are a solution for every area of my life. I didn't know how to behave until Alcoholics Anonymous. I was what the big book described as disgustingly antisocial. I really was. If you guys didn't play nice, I popped you in your mouth. Or I took the ball and I went home, and it wasn't my ball. And that's the kind of guy I was. And really service work, all of a sudden sitting on committees, right? And our common welfare, the traditions, taking the traditions, and not only does it help the group survive, start using those principles in every area of my life. Yes, some things aren't going my way, but our common welfare always came first. Sometimes that was I didn't always do it with eagerness and happiness, but when I sat down and said, this is the right thing to do, right, is for the entire family, or how to get along with my fellow employees. I found out how to show up and become an employee, right, to become an employer, to become a worker amongst workers, right, to give them an honest day. And things started unfolding in my life. I tell you today, my life is beyond reason. Beyond reason. And that's one of the things that my wife said on our wedding vows. She said she promised to love me beyond reason. Boy, have I pushed that. I love you, honey. So, you know what? I feel as if I talk any longer, it's just going to be a lot of rambling. So I'm going to close with this. If you're new to Alcoholics Anonymous, please, 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 or if you're even a retread, right, keep coming back no matter what. This is the only outfit I ever belonged to that everybody in here wants you to have a kick-ass life, and I want you to have a kick-ass life. And I will tell you there's power in the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Please remember this, old-timer or newcomer, right? Your higher power will meet you wherever you're at. Please don't stop coming. That's all I have.